Did you know, for example, cat owners are 30% less likely to have a heart attack? And that, lonely ladies living on your own with no family, partner, friends or love life, is the good news. Walking sideways burns 78% more calories than walking normally, which is why you never see a fat crab. And 35% of women would hate their partner to see their underarm hair, so they hide it under their nose and poking out of their knickers. Yes, Britain continues to be battered by freezing weather. Conditions in Birmingham were described as appalling, with no food on the shelves, schools shut and emergency services stretched to breaking point. And then it began to snow. College in County Durham is running an X Factor preparation course. It teaches the 3 golden rules: work on your vocals, become homeless and wait for your nan to die. And pubic lice are becoming extinct due to an increase in body waxing. Conservationists have now declared David O'Doherty a nature reserve. The government have unveiled plans for a new high-speed rail line. It said it will cost £32.7 billion, or £35 billion if you get a return. Yes, MPs have passed a bill to make gay marriage legal, even if it's a way of life you yourself don't subscribe to. Even if you think it's weird or somehow against nature, you still have to respect people's right to be a Tory MP. Did you know, for example, 1 in 20 couples say they sleep in separate rooms to strengthen their relationship? I guess they also have sex with other people to prove how much they love each other. 10% of people never talk about food at work, and that's because they're too fat to work, and besides, they don't want to talk with their mouth full. And 25% of men never use deodorant, but unfortunately, they do use public transport. Manchester City won their first Premier League title in 44 years. Well, that's not strictly true. For 43 years straight, they won shittest club in Manchester. Yes, it was Valentine's Day yesterday. It's named after St. Valentine, the patron saint of awkward meals at Pizza Express. So those were the most talked about things this week. But in other news, Paralympian Oscar Pistorius has been arrested for shooting and killing his girlfriend. Finally, a story Lance Armstrong can read and think, I'm actually not that bad a bloke. Yes, the top thing people learn from TV shows are cooking tips. The best thing about my girlfriend's cooking is I know exactly what I'm going to get: gastroenteritis. Yes, the horse meat scandal continues. IKEA have stopped selling meatballs after finding they contained horse meat. It's terrible. If you can't trust cheap meat products sold as an afterthought in a Swedish furniture shop, what can you trust? So those were the most talked about things this week. But in other news, a woman in Las Vegas has been caught having sex with a dog in her front yard. Oh, God, get a kennel. It's her own fault. She'd been leading him on for years. Police found the dog burying his bone in her back garden. 1 in 3 Scots want to leave the United Kingdom. So far, they've got as far as the off licence. And 20% of people would have sex on a plane. I once had a little bit of foreplay with a girl I met on a plane, Aer Lingus. After 70 years, 20,000 British troops are being brought home from Germany. And why not? If history's taught us anything, it's if there's one country that can be trusted on its own, it's Germany. Did you know, for example, 5% of UK adults take a teddy bear on holiday? It's ridiculous. Everyone knows the best way to smuggle cocaine is up a dog's bum. 8% of parents admit to having a favourite child. My parents always made it clear I wasn't their favourite, which is tough on an only child. And 10% of people have had sex in their office. I used to go out with a girl who worked for the council. She once let me have sex in the waste management department. It was my birthday. Did you know, for example, for every human in the world, there are 1 million ants, but surprisingly, only 1 deck? 30% of men buy their partners red roses on their anniversary. I bought my girlfriend some red roses, some red lingerie, and we had some red wine. And then we went up to the bedroom and read. And 5% of women think their eyebrows are their best feature. Ladies, I don't know much about eyebrows, but I do know they shouldn't be poking out the sides of your pants. Yes, Doctor Who is 3rd on our list of favourite shows. People say the show's not realistic, but I think it is. It's featured 11 different doctors, and I've never seen a single one of them washing their hands. So, those were the nation's favourite TV shows. But The Only Way is Essex came 16th. At the start of each episode of Towie, a disclaimer is read out, stating that some scenes have been created for your entertainment. Well, none that I've seen. 10th on the list was X Factor. Every year, the X Factor finalists release a charity single to help the poverty-stricken and destitute. This year, it's in aid of Matt Cardle. And Strictly Come Dancing came 12th on our poll. The surprise star of last series was Lisa Riley. She put her success down to being double-jointed. At every meal, she has beef and lamb. Yes, David Cameron has promised an in-out referendum on Europe. France and Germany have said Britain can't pick and choose its terms with Europe. There are just two things you need to remember, France and Germany: World War I and World War II. Yes, the government is to introduce a new citizenship test. Personally, I think if you've got the stamina, determination and willpower to hang on to the underside of a lorry for 18 hours, fuck the test. Welcome to Britain. Yes, archaeologists have uncovered the bones of Richard III in a Leicester car park. The remains of Richard III have been sitting in the car park since 1485. The good news is the first 2 hours were free. People have been talking about there are traces of horse meat have been found in several supermarket burgers. Silvercrest Food, one of the suppliers of the horse meat contaminated burgers, is said to be an award-winning company. And it turns out the award they won was the Grand National in 2012. Did you know, for example, the average man in Glasgow owns 2 suits, one for court and the other for the next time they go to court? 83% of teenage girls keep a diary, which it turns out is very bad news for 70s DJs. And 1 in 8 men try to lose weight before going on holiday. I decided to cheat. I got myself one of those things that makes you look thinner on the beach. A fat girlfriend. Yes, it was transfer deadline day yesterday. Manchester City striker Mario Balotelli has moved to AC Milan. David Beckham has signed for French club PSG. If you're watching, David, be careful what you eat in France. They recently found some beef DNA in their horse burgers. Jess Ennis was at the peak of physical fitness in the heptathlon. Watching her, I couldn't help feeling ashamed of myself because I could see what I was doing reflected in the telly. Yes, the Oscars were held on Sunday. Daniel Day-Lewis was the big winner. With his Oscars for My Left Foot, There Will Be Blood, and now Lincoln, he's won more Oscars for unwatchable, tedious films than anyone in history. Yes, the top advice you'd give your younger self is to be more confident. If I went back in time, I'd say to my younger self, you need to be more confident. And my younger self would say, what the fuck have you done to my teeth? Yes, UFOs. I once found myself surrounded by these strange, misshapen humanoids. I didn't know what to say, so I just said the first thing that popped into my head. Hello, Norwich. Yes, the Pope has resigned. He's going to be difficult to replace. Where are we going to find another paedophile apologist who's also a Nazi? Yes, the best thing about living with your parents is not having to pay bills. Just because you live with your parents doesn't mean you can't have a life. My mate lives with his parents and he got lucky the other night. Crispy pancakes for tea. Yes, the worst thing about fancy dress parties is people who don't dress up. I went to a fancy dress party as a pirate. Illegally copied all their DVDs. Yes, this week Lance Armstrong spoke to Oprah Winfrey about his drug scandal. Lance Armstrong is now despised around the world, which is the second thing he's got in common with Hitler. Did you know, for example, 1/3 of people flush the toilet while still sat on it, which I believe is known as a Manchester bidet. It takes the average person 7 minutes to fall asleep, although that can drop to under a minute if you're going out with John Richardson. Which you're not. No one is. Well, you go out with him then. And 25% of women have difficulty experiencing orgasms. They could try having a threesome with me and their more attractive sister. Might help, might not. I'm just saying, let's give it a go. Caprice is ideal for the high dive because these days her face permanently looks like it's travelling at 60 miles an hour. Yes, the most annoying thing that couples do is argue in front of other people. My dad had an amazing technique to avoid arguments in our house. He left when I was 2. I can tell you that Chris Huhne is not in our top 3, but Chris Huhne's girlfriend is bisexual, just like he'll be by the time he comes out of prison. Did you know, for example, 25% of people can write a text without looking at their phone, which is great because it means you can really concentrate on your driving. 48% of Brits think social networks can help new relationships. It's so true. My life has been such a social whirlwind since I joined Grindr. I've hardly been able to sit down. And And 20% of men don't know what a pedicure is. A pedicure? Pretty sure it's a cure for men like Jimmy Savile. Yes, the controversy over horse meat continues. Tesco pulled products off their shelves this week. That is a case of shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted into the mincer at the meat processing plant. Yes, the top thing people boast about is their kids. I make it a rule never to boast about my kids. The last thing I want is for my girlfriend to find out about them. Yes, the Pope's retired. Of course, the Pope was famously against using condoms. He said he couldn't feel anything. Yes, Justin Bieber caused outrage by turning up 2 hours late for a gig. It's not just kids that like Justin Bieber. My nan actually describes herself as a belieber. She's very religious and she's lost her teeth. Did you know, for example, 1 in 5 women have been offended by a partner calling them curvy? On behalf of men everywhere, I'd just like to say, sorry, fatty. 79% of pet owners sleep with their pets. But be careful, the last time I did, when I woke up, my duvet was soaking wet and my goldfish was dead. And 12% of adults regularly get sucked into money-making schemes. I got sucked into a money-making scheme. I made 50 quid, and to be honest, it didn't taste half as bad as I expected. I wrote a book about poltergeists, and I'm pleased to say it's literally flying off the shelves. Yes, the best way to make friends is to listen to people's problems. Of course, some people like me have the opposite problem, too many friends. It's like every makeup girl we've ever had on this show has had to leave because I'm too friendly. Yes, the best way to relax after a hard day at work is watch TV. I always like to sit in front of the telly and veg out, and by that I mean I don't wear any trousers. Did you know, for example, 1 in 8 adults in this country own a onesie? That's great, although I think there's a time and a place for a onesie. The place, your living room, the time, when you're 6. 79% of people enjoy experimenting with their meals, particularly the staff at Findus. And cat owners are 30% less likely to have a heart attack, mainly because their heart's already been broken.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Carr, and I'm announcing a new tour. It's called Jimmy Carr Laughs Funny, because, you know, I do. I go to jimmycarr.com for dates and tickets, and then, you know, I guess buy a ticket and come and see the tour. I laugh funny, so can you. Come and see me.